All right, so you're diving into episode 3 of Territory. You've already seen the first 2 episodes, so you've got the world, the characters.
Mhm.
But episode 3, well, that's where things really start to heat up.
Yeah, it kind of flips the script, you know?
Totally.
It's not just that the stakes are higher, but we get this whole new faction introduced, and that really throws a wrench in the works, especially considering what we already know about the power dynamics from the first couple of episodes.
The arrival of this new faction is a total game changer. It's not even really about resources anymore.
Right.
It's like this new group has a whole different philosophy when it comes to survival. Can you talk a bit more about how this challenges the established order and how these groups clash?
Well, it's almost like they're operating on two completely different sets of rules, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the original characters we've been following, they're all about maintaining a certain balance, a way of life they've
Yeah.
built up. But this new faction, they're almost predatory. They see an opening and they're going to exploit it, disrupt everything.
So tense.
Think about that scene where they first encounter the established group.
Yeah.
It's like watching two completely different species trying to communicate. You're just waiting for it to explode.
You almost don't know who to side with, especially as the episode unfolds and you see the impact of this new group.
Right.
It's like the episode is constantly asking you, what would you do? Would you stick to the old ways or embrace this new, more ruthless approach?
And that's where the moral dilemmas start to kick in. The episode doesn't shy away from pushing both the characters and us, the viewers, into some really uncomfortable territory.
So can you give an example? What's a scene that really highlights this moral struggle?
Oh, remember the scene where one of the main characters has to decide whether to sacrifice a member of this new faction to protect their own group?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I mean, talk about a brutal choice. There's just no easy answer.
It's heartbreaking.
On the one hand, you totally understand the need to protect your own people. But on the other hand, taking a life, I mean, that's a huge step. It really makes you question what's acceptable when it comes to survival, Where do you draw the line?
I was so conflicted watching that scene. Part of me wanted them to just stick to their morals, but then the other part of me understood the desperation. It really highlights just how much pressure these characters are under.
Absolutely.
And while they're grappling with these huge moral questions, it seems like their relationships are being tested too, right?
Oh, absolutely. The cracks start to show. You can see how even the strongest bonds can be fractured under this kind of stress. Remember how earlier in the episode, two of the characters made a pact to always have each other's backs?
Yeah.
Well, by the end of the episode, that loyalty is seriously in question. The episode really makes you think, how much can you really trust anyone when survival's on the line?
I mean, can you ever really know?
It's tough. Yeah, it's a pressure cooker. Everyone reacts differently.
Right.
Some hunker down, clinging to their beliefs,
Yeah.
while others become more, let's say, flexible, even ruthless.
And the environment itself seems to play a role in all of this, doesn't it?
Oh, for sure.
The isolation, the vast landscapes, it all just adds to that tension,
Mm.
Almost like the setting is another character pushing everyone to their limits.
Totally.
Can you talk a bit more about how the visuals and the sound amplify this sense of unease?
The creators of Territory are masters at using atmosphere to, ratchet up the emotional impact.
Yeah.
Those sweeping shots of the desolate landscapes, the way the camera lingers on the characters' faces, catching every flicker of doubt, every bit of fear, it's all so deliberate. And then there's the sound design. The way they use silence, it's particularly effective.
Oh, yeah.
There's this one scene where two characters are having this incredibly tense conversation, and the only sound you hear is the wind howling in the background.
Oh, I know exactly which scene you're talking about. It's like the silence itself is screaming. It's so unsettling.
Exactly. And then when the music does come in, it's often so sparse, almost haunting,
Right.
It really underscores just how fragile their situation is, that constant threat hanging over them.
It's almost like a horror movie. But instead of jump scares, it's this slow, creeping dread that just gets under your skin.
Yeah, and that feeling, it just permeates the whole episode. You're constantly on edge, waiting for the other shoe to drop.
So we've got this incredible tension, these really complex moral dilemmas.
Yeah.
And then on top of all of that, the episode starts to hint at something bigger at play, right? There's that conversation towards the end where it suggested that all of these struggles are somehow connected to a much larger conflict.
Hmm.
It's like we're only seeing a tiny piece of the puzzle.
That's one of the things I love about this deep dive. You start to pick up on these subtle clues, these little hints that there's way more to the story than meets the eye. It's like the writers are daring us to dig deeper, to question everything we think we know.
And it makes you crave more.
Mm,
You finish the episode and you're immediately thinking, what happens next?
totally.
Where does this all lead?
Yeah, it's the hallmark of great storytelling, isn't it? It's not just about being entertained, it's about making you think, making you question your own assumptions.
And I think that's what makes Territory so effective.
Mm.
It's not afraid to grapple with these big, difficult themes.
Exactly. It goes right for those gray areas of morality where the lines between right and wrong get all blurry.
Yeah.
And it forces us to confront some uncomfortable truths about human nature, about what we're capable of when we're pushed to our limits.
It's a real gut punch, but in the best way possible.
Totally. It sticks with you. It keeps you thinking about it long after the credits roll.
Absolutely. So we've talked about the plot, the themes, the atmosphere,
Hmm.
but what about the characters themselves? How do they evolve over the course of this episode? Are there any moments that stand out in terms of character development?
I think one of the most interesting things the episode does is explore this theme of resilience. These characters have been through so much already,
Oh, yeah.
and yet they keep finding a way to survive, to adapt. Even when they're pushed to their breaking point, there's this spark in them that refuses to be extinguished.
I love that.
Like, take character name, for example.
Yeah.
At the beginning of the episode, they're really struggling to cope with all the trauma they've experienced.
Right.
But by the end, they've found a new sense of purpose, this inner strength they didn't even know they had.
It's kind of inspiring. It shows that even in the darkest of times, there's still hope. There's always the potential for growth, for change. And it makes you wonder, what would it take to actually break these characters? What would be the final straw?
That's a question the episode leaves hanging in the air, and it's a question that I think will continue to haunt us as we go forward in the series.
It makes you realize that survival isn't just about staying alive. It's about holding on to your humanity, your sense of self, in the face of incredible adversity.
And that's where the real battle lies, isn't it?
It's not just a fight for survival, it's a fight for their souls.
Beautifully put. And the episode doesn't shy away from showing us the toll this fight takes on them. You see the scars, both physical and emotional.
Mm-hmm.
You see the doubt, the fear, the moments of despair. But you also see these flashes of courage, of compassion, of love. And those moments, they're what make it all worthwhile.
They remind us that even in the darkest places, humanity can still shine through.
And that's a powerful message.
So I'm curious, from your perspective, what's the one scene that really captures the essence of this episode? The one scene you think our listeners should really pay attention to?
There's a scene towards the end where a character name is standing on a cliff looking out at this vast wasteland. They're alone, exhausted, and you can see the weight of everything they've been through just etched on their face. But then they take a deep breath, straighten their shoulders, and there's this look in their eyes, this look of determination, of defiance. It's a small moment, but it speaks volumes about the resilience of the human spirit.
Oh, man, it gives me chills just thinking about it.
Yeah, it's one of those moments that stays with you.
It's a reminder that even when everything seems lost, there's always that possibility of hope, that strength to keep going, to keep fighting.
And that's a message I think we can all take away from this deep dive.
Yeah, it really does make you think about the choices you'd make in a situation like that. What compromises would you be willing to make? Where would you draw the line?
That's what's so great about this deep dive, It's not just passively watching a story play out. It's about actively engaging with these questions,
Yeah.
putting yourself in the character's shoes and asking, what would I do?
Exactly. So as we wrap up our deep dive into episode 3 of Territory, what's the one thing you want our listener to take away? What's the key insight or the question they should be pondering as they continue watching?
Keep an eye on the masks the characters are wearing,
Ooh.
In a world where survival is everything, everybody's performing to a certain extent. But look closely. Who's being genuine? And who's hiding their true intentions?
That's a great point. It makes you reevaluate everything you thought you knew about these characters.
And it sets the stage for some really interesting developments as the series goes on.
It's like the episode has planted a seed of doubt, and now we're just waiting to see what grows from it.
That's the beauty of good storytelling, isn't it? It keeps you guessing, keeps you engaged, leaves you wanting more.
Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into episode 3 of Territory. We hope you've gained some new insights and you're ready to continue exploring this amazing world. Remember, the journey's just beginning. And who knows what twists and turns lie ahead.